Hello everyone, it is me, Tamugi. Welcome back to my Warhammer 40K video. And today we're going to talk about the changes and thoughts about the upcoming 2019 Spring FAQ. Now that FAQ has been out for a day, well, by the time you see this video, it's probably going to be like the second or the third day, depends on when you see this video. But regardless, it's been out, and I think most people have time to actually read about it. And then what I'm going to do here today, though, however, is like first of all, I'm not gonna go over everything because like you can just read, right? And it's going to be like really boring if I just explain every single rule, and you can probably find a better source for that. Before we dive any deeper for the rest of the content, let's talk about the changes, because I think this is the one that people are going to care most about, and is the race changes, the Imperial Knight changes. Alright, so let's start talking about it. Imperial Knight changes. Castle Knight got a point increase on their weapon, the Volcano Lance and the Plasma Decimator, which in total it's got a 100-point increase. So now Knights will cost from 604 point to 704 point. So it's a point increase, and also the Rotate Island Shield can now only provide to a maximum of a 4+ invulnerable save instead of a 3+ like before. So now Knights got a nerf. I think this is undisputedly a nerf. However, I don't want to just stop right here. I want to see past like this blatant obvious nerf, because I think that a lot of people on the forum or on the Facebook group, like people are saying, Mr. Carl, I don't feel so good, Castle Knights are dying and no one will use Castle anymore. That's just like bullcrap. That's just a bunch of bullcrap. It's just that's complete opposite from the truth. Like I see, and I think not only we're going to see more Castellan than ever, they are actually going to be even more of a mainstay in the Imperial army. We're not going to see Valiant. We might see a little bit of a Crusader. We might see more Gallant, but we are not going to see the disappearance of Castle Knight, and here's why. Now, as obviously, let's start with the point decrease. The point decrease is nothing. Like, it is nothing. I mean, unless it's like a 200-point increase, then, it will be something. But it's a 100-point increase, it won't affect as much. Because whatever point you're adding to Imperial Knights, the Imperial Guard is just going to shed that point off from their brigade detachment. Like they're just going to shed it off. And whatever ally the Knights are going to take, they're just going to shed off some point, and they're good to go again. So the point increase is nothing. For instance, there's a list I wrote, not exactly a competitive list, but a list I wrote. It's Deathwatch with Kalachan Brigade with a single Castle Knight, and obviously with these changes, this got it's 100-point over. But to me, it was very simple. All I need to do was remove all the bike from my Deathwatch, and now I'm good to go again. I just need to remove my bike. Yes, I lose a huge proportion of my army, well, some proportion of my army, but now I get to use Castle like nothing happened. I just lose some bikes, and that's it. I can still use Castellan like nothing happened. And this is even more for the case like Blood Angels Smash Captain with Imperial Guard Brigade with Castellan. Like, they already have some overflow point to begin with. Having the 100-point increase doesn't really affect them whatsoever. They just have to, like maybe instead of taking Hellhounds, they kind of have to go back to Scouts with Heavy Flamer, or Scout Sentinels with Heavy Flamer, or instead of taking all the fancy like Primer Psychers and shit, they just have to go back to Company Commander, or instead of Sergeant Harker, they have to go back to Platoon Commander. Like all this like extra point can be shared off, no problem. This is not a problem. The 100-point increase is not going so overboard, it's going to hurt the whole soup army of Imperial list. It's not going to. It's going to hurt the Mono Knights army, but it's not going to hurt the Imperial soup at all. Like, not at all. It's, well, I mean, yes, 100-point is 100-point regardless, right? You're 100-point behind your opponent, but that still doesn't matter because Castle Knight is just that good. You're not going to stop using Castellan because you're paying an extra 100-point for it. Now, the point cost of Castellan went from really cheap to acceptable. It just went from cheap to acceptable, not expensive. It's not so expensive. Let's say if the Castle Knight got point increase up to like 1,000 point, like it went from 600 point to maybe 800 point or 900 point, then we might start seeing people stop taking it because it's getting way too expensive. It's taking a huge chunk of army. But 100%, 100 point in a 2K list is only 5% of the whole thing. It's only 5%. 5% of the point is well, it's something, but it's not that big of a deal. So there's the point cost. So people need to stop like going ape shit with this. Like, this is not a big deal for the soup army. Now let's talk about the invulnerable save with the rotate iron shield. Now, first of all, this only just changes how the knight will play. It will not stop them from being like the toughest thing to kill. They still have their 28 wounds. They still have their 2+ armor save with the sanctified iron relic, right? They're still gonna take that. But now, instead of taking the iron bulwark, which is provide the constant 4+ invulnerable save, and they get to use the rotate iron shield to get a 3+. Instead of doing that, this is the two stuff are going to happen. Either one, they still take iron bulwark, and they just stop using the rotate iron shield altogether, because like you can't go any further than that. It's only 4+, so you basically save 3 CP per turn. Like better, even more CP for me to spend as Raven, as House Raven. I can spend more CP over there. I can spend more CP on my Smash Captain. Win-win. Like, yeah, sure, I don't get 3+ invulnerable save, but who the fuck cares? I just take iron bulwark, let the 4+ do the job for me, and there is that. So that's one way to see it. They just lose like 16% chance of survivability, but who cares? Adeptus Mechanicus with their, I think it's called it's not Adeptus Mechanicus, it's the knight that goes with the Mechanicum. They actually have a stratagem. It's called the Machine Spirit Resurgent, which will bring whatever damage table they currently have. It's like, doesn't matter how much damage you're dealing to a knight, they just have to spend 1 CP, 1 command point, to shoot with their knight at the full ballistic skill, as if they are at their full health. This is actual stuff that Games Workshop needs to nerf, but did not. This is the actual stuff that's really bothering people, because like, this is a problem with Imperial Knights, especially with Castellan, right? If you don't kill it in 1 turn, if you fail to kill the Imperial Castellan Knight in 1 turn, they're just gonna use Machine Spirit Resurgent, and they can shoot at their full ballistic skill like nothing happened. Like, yeah, sure, you can probably kill the turn after, but that doesn't really matter, because like, whatever firepower you're dumping into Knight, if you fail to kill it in a single turn, then all the firepower in that turn is considered wasted, because you're not doing any damage to the knights. The knight player are not getting punished for taking so much damage, and you're not getting rewarded for doing damage, because they can spend one command point to activate Machine Spirit Resurgent, and they can shoot at their full ballistic skill as their top roll of damage table. So that's the thing that actually need to nerf, but like, they did not nerf that for some reason. And then the other way is that instead of taking Iron Bulwark, you just don't take Iron Bulwark, and you just like, you know what, I'm gonna spend 3 CP per turn. Because like, this is actually even more flexible, because if you take Iron Bulwark, you're basically setting yourself into you're actually locking yourself with 4+ invulnerable save, which can actually work against you. For instance, if your opponent is Imperial Guard player, and he's trying to shoot at you with his Lima Rust Battle Tank with Battle Cannon, which is a -2 to your armor save, right? And assuming you take a 2+ armor relic, which, you should, other than, the Wrath of Call, then the 2+ AP, the 2+ armor and -2 AP is going to get you a 4+ save anyway. So you probably don't need that 4+ invulnerable. Like, you probably don't. So it's like, if they shoot at you with the battle cannon, taking Iron Bulwark is kind of like wasted. It's like, it's wasting your Warlord trait. Your Warlord trait could have gone to something even more powerful, such as the one that House Vulker has, which is the one that ignores the wound roll of 1, 2, and 3, which we're going to talk about like immediately after this. So let's go back to like, okay, so if I'm going to spend 3 CP per turn, right, in order to maintain my rotating iron shield, this is actually even more flexible, because like, you can choose to activate it or not. Whereas Iron Bulwark is just something you have to choose before the game starts, and you have to stick with it throughout the entirety of the game. So I will personally prefer the second option, which is basically, it's like, don't take Iron Bulwark, just take whatever Warlord trait you want, and then just spend 3 CP to activate Rotate Iron Shield if you see fit. If your opponent is having a lot of high AP weapon, where 4+ invulnerable save is going to get some value out of it, then activate it. But if not, just live with your 2+ armor save. You know, like let their low AP weapon bounce off your 2+ armor, and if they're shooting at you with the AP3 or AP4 weapon, then just activate rotate ion shield. Big fucking deal, right? And not only that, you know, like once again, if you go the mechanical side of the Knights, you can always activate Machine Spirit Resurgence, and then you just shoot at your full ballistic skill as if nothing happened in the turn after. So like I think this is probably like the better way to set up, and also because Knight have a lot of good warlord traits, like taking Iron Bulwark and combine it with like a rotate ion shield to get 3+ invulnerable save wasn't really like the best way to play in the first place. Like I don't know why people keep talking about 3+ invulnerable save like it's a thing. It's not a thing. All right, only noobs do that. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, there are people who play in tournament who does that, but it's not like the best way to play it. The best way to play is actually choose the House Vulker, which, you know, it will convert majority of the damage away. Now let's talk about this the warlord trait I was just talking about, the House Vulker one, which is the one that ignores all wound roll by your enemy of 1 and 2 and 3. Now ignore wound roll of 1, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever, you know, 1 always a fail anyway, so it's like that, just stop talking about it. What about wound roll of a 2? So wound roll of 2, it's like if you're getting hit by strength 16 or more weapon, which is really rare, like really rare. If you're getting wounded by a weapon that can actually wound you on a 2+, you will ignore it. But these kind of weapons are so scarce, they don't happen all the time. So like wound roll of 1 and 2, you can just throw it out of window. What's really important is the wound roll of 3, because majority of the anti-tank weapon, last cannon, rupture cannon, and any other stuff that has a strength 9 or more, which are supposed to, you know, supposedly they are very powerful, or even the volcano lance that Castle Knight's carrying himself, are going to wound Castle Knight, which is toughness 8 unit on a 3+. Now, if you get to ignore the wound roll of a 3+, that is a huge bonus, because now they have to wound you on a 4, 5, or 6. So now the proper way to deal with your Castle Knight is, instead of shooting at you with strength 9 or more weapon, right, which will wound you on the 3+, now it doesn't really matter. They can shoot at you with those weapons, but they will only successfully wound you on the 4 or more. So they might as well shoot at you with strength 8 weapon, because it will always wound you on the 4+ or more anyway. Otherwise, if it's a 1 or 2 or 3, it's going to fail regardless. So you basically deflect a lot of high strength weapon that's gonna wound you on the 3+. You know, you basically deflect a lot of it. And also, bear in mind that last cannon is like probably the most common way. Since now you lose your 3+ invulnerable save, you're going to see a lot more high AP weapons shooting at your way. So taking this trait makes even more sense, because now since you don't have the 3+ invulnerable save, you're gonna see a lot more high AP weapon. But it doesn't really matter, because high AP weapon with a strength 9 or 10, they will wound you on 3+, but they can wound you on a 3+ because you have this warlord trait. They can only wound you on a 4, 5, or 6, right? So you're basically making their life much harder. So taking this trait in combination of activating rotate ion shield, depending on the situation, with the machine spirit resurgence is just like the next combo people are going to go for. You know, like mark my word, that's just going to be like the thing in the future. Like this is going to be a thing. So this is why I want to say about Knight. And let's talk about like the natural predator of the Knights, which is like I talked about before, like the Eldari Flyer. The Eldari Flyer and the Smash Captain, right? The Smash Captain is back. It can charge the Knight, so Knight sort of, that's actually affecting Knight a lot more than just the Knight nerf, you know, like the 100-point increase is like whatever. And the 4+ invulnerable save, like I just said, you can basically, it's like a flowing river. The whole point of stopping or nerfing Knight is to stop the river from flowing, but what Games Workshop does with the Rotate Ion Shield, it's basically directing the flow of the river to the other side. You know, it just flows the complete other direction. It does not stop the river, it just flows in a complete different direction, and it's still flowing. You know, like it's not dead. What's really actually punishing Knight is the Eldars and the Smash Captains, right? But the Eldar got the kick in the teeth too. So like Eldar, alright, what the biggest change of Eldar is they can no longer cast the second ability to Dark Eldar, which is huge because Dark Eldar is survivable, and Dark Eldar has all sort of like Funeral Pain shenanigans going on with their Razor Wing Jet Fighter and with their Dark Lance, right? So this is what they usually do, is they use their second power to cast the Eldar second power to cast Doom and Guide and all the shenanigans on top of the Dark Eldar stuff. So both Dark Eldar and Eldar can benefit from the same ability, psychic power, and then they can use it to kill Imperial Knights. That has always been like the balancing factor of keeping the knight from reaching the absolute top. And also you have to bear in mind Genestealer Cult with their mental onslaught shenanigan is gone as well. You know, back in the day, you can, just LVO. In the LVO, we see Genestealer Cult slowly climbing up the ladder for absolutely no reason. And the reason why they do that is because they are targeting Castle and Knightless, where they use a bunch of combos, and then they can just continue to mental onslaught Castle Knight from 28 to 0. Just complete from start to 0. They can just completely mental onslaught it, and since it's a mortal wound, and it will just continue regardless whether you save it or not. It's just gonna keep continuing until your Castle Knight dies. That's how Genestealer Cult managed to climb the ladder in the previous LVO. That's how they did it. But now it got nerfed. The Genestealer Cult mental onslaught got nerfed. Like, you can't do that anymore. They only have to roll 6 to get out of it. Instead of just even if they roll 6, they still lose. Now, if they roll 6, the cycle stops, right? And the same thing works with Death Grip, but like Death Grip is kind of like just like it's whatever. Like it's kind of like a meme thing going on, but like it's not like a huge deal. So with Genestealer Cult's mental onslaught bullshit gone, and with Eldari not able to cast psychic ability on Dark Eldar, Knights basically are going to run free. They're gonna run wild because like the two of their biggest enemy, Eldar and Genestealer Cult, are now gone. They are now gone. They're completely gone. So like that's what I keep saying, that all things considered, Knight didn't get nerfed, especially Castellan. I mean, think in this way, okay? You're paying 100 point and the ability to not able to use 3+ vulnerable save for the nerf of your two biggest predators. I would do that trade all day. Like, I'll do that trade any day. Like, yes, if you just look at Knight itself and say, oh, it's a nerf, oh my god, it's so unplayable. You have to see the bigger picture. You have to see like what your majority of competitors are doing, right? Your competitors, your two biggest competitors, the Genestealer Cult and Eldar, just got kicked in the nuts. You got kicked in the teeth, yeah, sure, but they got kicked in the fucking nuts, man. Like, they can't do anything anymore. Like, they can't have like the proper weapon to fight against you anymore. Except for, Smash Captain, they can charge over the unit now. So that's a threat to you. Yes, there is a threat. There's an actual ongoing threat for Castle Knight from now on because Smash Captain is going to be a thing again. But Eldar and Genestealer Cult, outside of the scope, they're just completely gone. So like, I just want people to know that before they go on the bandwagon and talk about how Castle Knights are dead, they just need to look at the bigger picture and understand that it's not entirely the case. I think, and I will say, mark my word, it's just that not only we're going to see more of a Castellan, it's going to be even more of a stable in the future tournament. Like, mark my fucking word, that's just going to be the case, right? So this is pretty much it about Knights. So all the previous beta rules are going to be implemented. So that includes Border Discipline, Prepared Position, Tactical Restraint, yada yada. So those kind of stuff that was introduced back in the last year's Spring FAQ and last year's Fall FAQ are going to be implemented, including one extra rule called the Bolted Discipline. Now, the Bolted Discipline is the one was introduced back in the White Dwarf issue, where it allows basically Adeptus Astartes and Heretic Astartes, as well as the Fallen. Well, not Fallen. Fallen was recently added. It basically allows Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine to able to shoot with their bolter twice with one of the 3 conditions. Like, the first condition is you have to be within half of weapon's maximum range. Second is that you have to remain stationary, and the third is that you have to fall into one of the categories. It's like a Biker, Centurion, Dreadnought, Terminator, whatever, blah blah blah, right? So like, as long as you fit one of the 3 criteria, you get to shoot twice with your rapid fire weapon, even if you're not within half range of the weapon. So that's pretty good. And what this thing affect the most is probably going to be Deathwatch, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. The Deathwatch. Now, I heard a lot of people say the Deathwatch is dead because like the Bolter Discipline is gone for them. Well, it's not exactly gone. You can still use Bolter Discipline. It's just that you don't get to use it in conjunction with the special issue ammunition anymore. But the option is still open for you. For instance, you can still use Stormbolter. You can still use Stormbolter and the Twin Bolt Gun on the bike, right? You can still use them and just shoot right? You can just shoot them, and you can just shoot them without using special issue ammunition at the maximum range. Because I mean, if you think about this, okay, just think about this. You don't, when you're using those bolt weapons to shoot, who are you going to shooting at? You're gonna shoot at whatever that you choose with your mission tactic, right? For instance, if you choose troop with your mission tactic, you get to reroll wound roll of a 1, right? You get to reroll wound roll of a 1, okay? And if you activate the doctrine, you actually get +1 to wound to that. Well, obviously just for one squad, but regardless, that's still an option open for you. So what happens is like there isn't really that much point to activate the special issue ammunition for them in the first place anyway. They actually still benefit a lot from the bolter beta rule. So for instance, let's take bike for instance, right? Bike, Deathwatch bike, it has super high mobility, and it actually benefits a lot from the bolter beta rule, because now back in the day they have to move 14 inches and they have to get within another 12 inches in order to double tap with their twin bolt gun on their bike, right? But not anymore, you know, like with the bolter beta rule, you can actually move 14 inches and shoot at 24 inches with the maximum amount of shot. And combine that with special issue ammunition, you got yourself a very deadly combination. Now, what happens is that that's actually not going to be the case anymore, but that's okay, you know, that's okay, because like, who are you gonna shoot at with twin bolt gun anyway? I mean, first of all, twin bolt gun does not have any sort of AP whatsoever, right? It does not have any sort of form AP. So if you're going to shoot with let's say Kraken rounds or even Vengeance round, right, then you should, well, I mean, Kraken round increase the range of the weapon, but like you already have such a high mobility, what's the point of increasing the range in the first place? Yes, you get like extra AP, but like, yeah, whatever, right? And as for Vengeance round, they actually deduct your shooting range. It actually deducts your shooting range by 6 inches, so you actually have to get really close in order to trigger that. But if you're already that close, then you already got the rapid fire range anyway. So like it's really not affected. What really matter is you're trying to snipe, well, not exactly snipe, but like there's probably a better word for it. You're trying to shoot at the enemy GEQ, or maybe stuff like drone, like stuff with like the same armor save and vulnerable save. They don't really benefit a lot from you know, you don't get a lot by using AP weapon. They're just gonna take the vulnerable save regardless. Those kind of stuff will benefit a lot if you shoot at it with Hellfire round, which it will wound every single 2+. But okay, now people say, okay, this is obviously a loss, right? If you can't just like move 14 inches and shoot 24 inches, double tap, and then wound every single 2+. That's a loss, right? Obviously it's a loss, but however, I mean, if you think about this, okay, Deathwatch already allows you to pick a certain type of unit with mission tactic, which allows you to reroll wound roll of a 1. All right, you are ready to do that with certain type of unit, and in addition, you also get to activate the doctrine if you really want to activate the doctrine, and you get +1 to your wound roll. So for bolt guns, right? Bolt guns, it's a string 4 weapon. If assuming you're shooting a GEQ, which you should, right? Assuming you're shooting a GEQ, then you're already wounding them on the 3+ anyway, and if you get another +1, you wound them on the 2+, and you get to reroll 1. You know, even if you don't activate doctrine, wounding on 3's reroll 1, it's already good enough. It's already good. You don't have to use Hellfire round. You don't actually have to do that. So it's actually better for biker from now on to just like double tap with the beta roll instead of just going for like the Hellfire round. It's just not necessary. What actually got kicked in the teeth in this change with the bolter discipline, that you have to choose either or as Deathwatch, is probably going to be veteran with Storm Bolter and Storm Shield. Now, I mean, Storm Shield is not affected obviously, but like it's just a setup that's really common with the Deathwatch. Now, Storm Shield with Storm Bolter, what's gonna happen is like back in the day, well, I mean, it's back when they were still enjoying the benefit of the beta rule, they can actually sit all the way in the back in the base, right? The Storm Bolter has a range of 24 inches, which is quite short actually, it's quite short. But with the addition of the Kraken round, which increased the range by 6 inches, their weapon becomes 30 inches. Now 30 inches with the Storm Bolter, they got -1 AP, 30 inches, so it's basically a pseudo bolt rifle, but instead shooting twice with bolt rifle, because bolt rifle is rapid fire 1, right? Storm Bolter is rapid fire 2. Now, it's if you have a 5-man veteran squad, you basically get like 10 shots. Oh well, no, you get rapid fire 2. That's 4 times 5. Okay, you get 20 shot. You get 20 shot at range 30 inches, and it's string 4 AP 1, right? If you use Kraken Round, obviously we're talking about Kraken Round here, and it's just crazy, right? And then obviously there's going to be like a watch captain that's gonna stand beside them so they can reroll hit rolls of 1. And bear in mind, don't forget, you obviously gonna have mission tactic, which allows you to reroll wound rolls of 1 of your choice. And then if you really want to, you can activate Doctrine too. So it's just really powerful. And you know, like what happens now is you cannot do that anymore. You can't just sit in the back and just pew pew with your 30-inch Stormbolter anymore. Now the Stormbolter got hit really hard. Now, however, here's what I think though. Majority of the Deathwatch player are building their list based on the veteran because it was just that good, right? So it was just like veteran, and then combined with like biker with Terminator and Terminator, you know, that was just like a proper setup because the Bolter Beta rule benefit them the most. What's gonna happen now is you're gonna revert back a little bit. You're gonna be like intercessors, and veteran. You still want a squad of veteran, yes. There's still ways to play it. There's still ways to save them, so to speak. Now, there's 2 ways to do it. Now, first of all is just keep the Stormbolter. Like, just keep the Stormbolter. You don't have to change anything. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take these motherfuckers and combine with the Angelus Beacon with a jump pack Liberian, and then just deep strike the entire squad next to enemy's face. Well, not exactly like right in their face, but 12 inches away. So as long as you get your double tap special roll, and that's fine. You know, as long as you're in rapid fire range, that's fine too. So you basically use Angelus Beacon to teleport you deep strike with Liberian first, right? And then you use the teleportation to get your veteran squad to sit within rapid fire range of your intended target, and you just blast away. You just completely blast away with the rapid fire weapon. So there is that. You know, you can still do that. That's just still an option open for you. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to save the Angelus Beacon for something else, or you want to use a different relic, or you don't want to use the deep strike tactic, then you can just switch their Stormbolter into Stalker Bolter. Stalker Bowgun, right? Which also costs 4 points. It's actually the same point cost as the Stormbolter. However, Stalker Bolter is a heavy weapon and it has better AP. So not only you get to really sit in the back and shoot really far, right? It's 36 inches. You gotta sit in the back, shoot really far, and now you also don't have to worry about not being able to move. Because, well, I mean, yes, if you move with a heavy weapon, you're gonna like have -1 to hit, but that doesn't really matter if you really have to move, right? Because back in the day, if you have Stormbolter, you're not allowed to move whatsoever. Like, you're not allowed to move because the moment you start moving, you lose the Bolter Beta rule, like immediately right off the bat. So you just defeat the purpose of taking them in the first place. So they're kind of like locked into one single place. They're not allowed to move in order to like get the most out of their DPS, but not anymore. Like if you choose to use the Stalker Bolter, then, you know, if they really have to move, they can actually move, and with, you know, I'll bet they have to -1 to their hit rolls, but that doesn't really matter because they can always reroll the hit rolls of 1 if you have a watch captain nearby. So there's that. That's my thought about Deathwatch, like how you can still play it. I think Deathwatch is not dead. It just went back to where they were. Well, not exactly completely back. Remember, this is the either or. You can choose to use beta roll or the special issue ammunition on the go. You don't lose both. You don't actually lose anything. You just have to choose either or. You have to choose one of them and then apply it based on your current situation. So if the situation works in your favor, choose the beta. If it does not, don't choose it. There's that. It's pretty simple. Like, you don't. I see a lot of naysayers or like doomsayers saying like, oh my god, Deathwatch is like so dead. It's like, well, I mean, yes, they got hit pretty hard, but like they're not dead, you know, like they're still quite playable, I think. Like Deathwatch is just going to see more play, especially if you consider like every changes that's just coming up, including the Knight nerf, including like the Eldari nerf. Like you're just gonna see a lot more Deathwatch play in the future. So that's just how I feel about the Deathwatch overall. Yes, got hit, but they're not dead yet. All right, that's just my verdict of it. Now let's talk about the other changes for the beta rule, the previous beta rule that's been implemented. So the prepare position, tactical restraint, tactical reserve, and infiltration challenges. I'm just gonna talk about all of them at once because there's no point to like go over them one by one. Prepare position is just basically 2 CP, you get to use it, and then you get like a cover for your entire army if you go second. This is only available if you go second. This is not available to you if you go first. Well, I mean, obviously, right? Like, why the hell would you need it if you go first? But if you, let's say if you were going first and then you deploy very aggressively, but then you ended up going second because your opponent sees initiative, don't worry, you still have a prepared position to use because now you're technically going second, so you can use prepared position. Now, obviously, prepared position does not benefit a Titanic unit or aircraft, which is a new attribute Games Workshop given to any flyer rule that has the minimum movement speed. They have an aircraft thing going on, so which kind of makes sense, you know, like how the hell is cover say is going to help flyer? It makes no sense. So I'm just happy they actually add this. So good for them, right? And then tactical restraint is the one that you cannot gain infinite CP anymore, which, you know, I think we all know about it. So no more CP farming. This is like everyone loves it. Like nobody hates it, you know, like even Imperial Guard, Imperial Knight player are happy with the change. Well, no, they're not exactly happy, but it's just like at least they're not so OP that every time they say they play Imperial Knight, people just kind of stare at them with like disgust. It's like, oh my god, that's CP farming guy, right? Like they, you know, at least they gain some dignity back. So like that's great, right? And tactical reserve and infiltration stratagem. This is a bad news for Tyranid. You know, this is bad news for melee army, but you know what? We just have to live with it. Basically, what happens is like. In last year, they start introduce like the possibility that you cannot deep strike in turn 1. You know, it was first that you cannot deep strike outside of your deployment zone, and then later they changed it to you cannot deep strike even in your own deployment zone in turn 1. You cannot deep strike whatsoever. Like you just can't do that, right? First of all, it was just really hard to bear. It was just like, what the fuck, man? Like, how am I supposed to win against a Shui army as a melee army? Like, I stand no chance. Like, all I can do is run up to them and then trying to, you know, survive. Well, this is just stupid. I don't have any sort of way to threaten them in turn 1. You know, at first that was just like really hard to accept. But later on, after playing with this role over a year, I'm starting to appreciate this role. It's just... it actually helps Tyranid a lot too. Like imagine if you're going second, right? If you imagine you're going second, you have your Gene Stealers, you have Hormigons, you have everything to play on the table, and you're ready to, you know, go all out frontal assault. And then the Gene Stealer cult, your opponent, just drop down like 15 hybrids, right? And then they start using fucking hand flamer to flame everything you have, and then you just lose everything at turn 1. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's just really stupid, you know. It's just really stupid. I mean, yeah, of course you can use prepare position, but how's that gonna help, right? So after a while, I think this actually works for melee army as well as works for the ranged army, right? It's just really good, you know. Like now you cannot deep strike in turn 1. You can actually do whatever. You can deploy a little bit more freely, and obviously you still have you have to set up your defensive anti deep strike net. You still have to get it out because like you can't just have everything hide in the corner and then expect to spread everything out to form a net by the before turn 2, which is, you know, at the end of turn 1. It's just not possible because the unit does not move that fast. So your opponents still have to prepare like an anti-deep strike zone for them as well. So this is good because you can spread them out and then you can take them down one by one. So there's that. Now infiltration is the one that people have the most dispute about, which is I also kind of don't understand. It's just like you know, like Stitches 8 and I think, is it called Stitches 8 or Stagers 8? I'm not quite sure. So the Adeptus Mechanicus with their Stitches 8, and then Alpha Legion with Raven Guard. Those and also various other stratagems dependent infiltration, right? So bear in mind, I'm saying the stratagems dependent infiltration, not infiltration overall, because infiltration like Scout, like Space Marine Scout, are not affected. The one that is given to a unit by ability is not affected whatsoever, but the one that's given with the stratagems that say activate the stratagem and then you get to deploy one of your unit before the first battle round begins 9 inches away from your opponent, those stratagems are now changed. Now they are now changed to you're allowed to move one of those units 9 inches ahead before the first battle round begins, and while you have to be 9 inches away from your opponent. So it kind of got kicked in the teeth, you know, like just really bad. But if you're playing against an opponent that work for them, like they're not going to just like castle up and let you deploy stuff anywhere on the map as you wish. It's just not going to happen. They're going to have their own wall of protection in their own deployment zone, and they're going to have their scouts and their actual infiltrators scatter across the map, where you basically have no room to deploy your unit whatsoever. You have no way to deploy your unit because bear in mind, this happens before the first battle round begins. So this is after both sides has been deployed, so everything is on the map, and then before the first round begins, you get to set a unit 9 inches away from your opponent. Which if your opponent knows how to play, the unit you set up wouldn't be anywhere near what they are intended to be, because they have like all the scouts and stuff spread across the map, and you just can't. Yeah, go ahead, shoot at my scout, like, go ahead, but you cannot shoot at my important unit because, they're all far behind, deep in my line, which, you're maybe, I don't know, in this case, maybe aggressors, you can't reach it anywhere, so that's just kind of bad. But like, now it changes to that you move 9 inches. So before the first battle round begins, you actually get to move 9 inches. Now, the move 9 inches, you can move in any direction. So now what you can do is that you can actually try to go for the direction that your opponent did not set up their scout with. Obviously you still have to be 9 inches away from your opponent after ending this move, so you still cannot move within 9 inches. But since you are moving from your base and you get to choose whether you want to move or not, this is quite helpful, because now not only you can move forward, you can actually move backward, right? So this is before the first battle round begins, right? So let's say if you're going second, right? If you're going second, okay, let's say, okay, you deploy your army, your opponent deploy your army, and you set your pew pew unit all the way in the, like, right on the edge of the deployment zone, right? And you're ready to like go all out shooting as soon as possible. You're trying to get in your whatever range, your rapid fire range or assault range, whatever, right? You're trying to get range as close as possible. You're trying to deploy as aggressively as possible. And what happens is, like, okay, and your opponent wins the seize initiative rule, right? Your opponent wins, and it's like, fuck, right? Now he actually gets to go first. What's gonna happen is you can actually use the stratagem, or it says, okay, you know what, I'm gonna use the stratagem. And well, I mean, you have to use the stratagem before you decide it, but like, if you use this stratagem, you can actually move your unit 9 inches. Like, it's not 9 inches forward. You can actually move it backward. That's like, okay, you know what? You seize initiative, I'm going to move my stuff backward. They're going to move back to cover, so you can't shoot at it. So you can actually use it that way too. Instead of like, okay, well, I mean, I'm just going to deploy it like here, right? It's just, yeah, of course, obviously, this is a nerf. This is a nerf, like, there's no doubt about it. It's just a blatant nerf that no one can deny. However, it's just like, okay, now you get to actually move the unit away from the danger if you really want to, right? So there is the changes that you can actually sort of utilize, and there's that. So those are the previous beta rule that has been implemented. It's nothing special, like, we all see this coming. It's like no surprises whatsoever. So let's talk about the new core rules. That the new core rules, that's actually matter because these are going to, well, this is not exactly new, it's just like they kind of like change it a little bit. So let's talk about the first one, the fly and the assault over model. Like, okay, so in the last update, they said like unit with the fly keyword can only move over model in movement phase, and that basically implies that you're not allowed to do that in assault phase. So you're not allowed to charge over a unit in assault phase, even though you have fly, which has always been the case before. That's how Smash Captain got so powerful, because like no matter how many layers of wall that you're building that's protecting your castle at night, Smash Captain activating stratagem, which allows it to charge 3d6, right? 3d6 is really far. On average, that's actually 9 inches, right? On average, obviously. So you can actually charge really far, and maybe even a little bit more further than that. And like usually people with their bubble wrapping, they only like if they have like one layer, that's decent. If they have 2 layer, they are pretty professional. If you have 3 layer, that's just obsessive. Like usually people only have like 2 layers of guardsmen. Like 2 layer is already a lot. Like you can't do that on every single flank, because if you do that, you basically just like put all your guardsmen together, and God knows what's gonna happen against a guard player if they put all their shit together versus like a space marine player. You can just like orbital bombard the shit out of it, right? So that's not gonna happen. So they're gonna have to spread out a little bit more as well. So they can't just like clump together. But what happens is like the Smash Captain can basically just like fly over them and just like assault the castle at night. That was the case. with the implementation of the rule, they cannot do that anymore. So that's how Castellan got even more powerful, because their natural predator, the natural predator, the Smash Captain, has been blocked out by the bubble wrapping unit with the rules that says you are only allowed to use your fly over ability in movement phase, and obviously charge move was not in the movement phase, therefore you cannot do it during that phase. But now with the rules blatantly states that you can actually fly over model during assault phase as well, that means that Castle Knights are now in danger once again. So the proper way to deal with Castle Knight, well, if you're Imperial player, obviously, if you're Imperial player, the proper way to deal with Castle Knight is Blood Angel Smash Captain once more. It's now another option for you, because like it doesn't matter how many fucking walls of bubble wrapping guardsman it has, you can just charge over it. So now they have to either spend more resources to build their wall. Yes, they have to build their wall, and then they have to put their castle in a more proper position instead of just putting it out in the open. You know, they kind of have to do a little bit more work in order to protect their castle at night. So this is good. This is really good. You know, like this is like a subtle nerf to Castellan that people are not seeing. Like everyone's talking about, oh, they got nerf 100 point, no more 3++. Oh my god, knights are dead. You know, like those are not even remotely close to the core of the matter. The actual stuff that matters is over here. Like the ability, their natural predator is now back, you know, and Castle Knight is on their menu, you know, so it's like, this is the stuff that people should really talk about. So Smash Captain is back, and that's really good. Now, let's talk about the aircraft and base blocking. Now, remember when I was playing the tournament in Taiwan as Tyrannid, I talked about that there was a Dark Eldar player who used the base of their aircraft, their Razor Wing jet fighter, to basically block the entire advance of my army, which was it was a legit strategy. It was a legit strategy because that's how the game should be played. It was ruled as written. It was played as intended. I'm not knocking on the player. I'm just saying that the player was really smart to use the rule to his advantage. So there's that. But now that the aircraft, it becomes a huge problem. Like the base blocking makes no sense. It's just, you know, a lot of people have the same problem. Like the mass aircraft, Eldar aircraft list was not necessarily powerful because they have all sort of like -2 and -3 to hit. They are so powerful because, first of all, obviously because they are really hard to kill with the -2 and -3 to hit. But at the same time, they cannot be assaulted because they are they are supersonic flyer. They not only you cannot assault them unless you have the fly keyword, they also block the movement with their base, which makes no sense whatsoever. But it was a legit strategy, because if you block the movement of your opponent, they cannot camp objective, and since you cannot be killed, well, very hard to kill with shooting attack because you have all the hit modifiers, it becomes a nuisance. You know, it's just like you just can't kill it, and they just constantly blocking the path. So it creates enough problem that people start complaining to Games Workshop, and then, you know, I agree, you know, this is a welcoming change. So the changes now is that you can no longer base blocking with the aircraft. Obviously, you cannot put your model on their base. Like, you can't just like, the base is still there, right? The base is still there. You can move through it. You can move away from it, or whatever you want to do. You can just, when you're moving your model, you can just pretend the base is not there whatsoever. And then obviously you can end within 1 inch of the base if you really want to, but obviously you cannot put your model on top of the base, because that, you know, when your opponent's trying to move his stuff, that, you know, he'll have to take your model away, and that'll create even more problems. So you cannot end your move on top of his base, like literally putting model on his base. You can't do that, but you can move through it or move within 1 inch of it, no problem. You can do that now. So no more aircraft base blocking. So that's I would say a nerf. It's going to be a nerf for like Eldar Flyer, because like no other races can actually do it with their flyer. Their flyer is not as efficient, and their flyer is not as survivable. So this is, like, generally speaking, a nerf to Eldar in general. So this is really good, like nerfing to Eldar. Everyone loves it, like fucking Eldar, right? So there's that. Now let's talk about remove and reappear from battlefield. Now this is the stuff that's going to be affecting Necron the most, probably, because like back in the day, like people always argue that my will be done. Like my will be done is the ability that you're given to like a Necron warrior or Necron immortal unit that basically says, okay, you get +1 to their hit rolls, advanced roll, blah blah blah, right? But like They also have a relic called I think it's the Veil of Shadow, whatever it's called. I think it's Veil. It's like it basically teleport. It removes the model. It removes a model, the bearer, along with a unit of your choice from the battlefield, and then redeploy them 9 inches away from an enemy. Right. So it was just like, okay, so it's basically like a one-turn deep strike sort of kind of deal, right? But it says remove from the battlefield. Now, people were arguing that whether remove from the battlefield means they lose their buff or not. Now, apparently GW says, okay, you know what? Let's just make this really clear. No, it does not remove the buff. It does not remove the buff that's being cast on them that does not have any sort of range requirement. So, if there was an ability, second power, or whatever, that's cast on them, you know, and it does not require any sort of range, for instance, like, okay, so if you have like aura ability, right? Let's say you're close to like a Cryptek. You're close to Cryptek, and the Cryptek has aura ability that allows you to roll the RP, add the RP roll by 1, right? If you're within 6 inches of it. But if you teleport away, obviously you don't benefit from that anymore because you're no longer within 6 inches of the Cryptek that's you just teleport away from, right? You just teleport away from him. Of course, you don't retain the ability of the Cryptek's aura ability. However, if the Overlord right here casts the Might Will Be Done on you, which, you know, it's being cast on you, it does not have any sort of like effective range requirement. It's just like, okay, I cast it on you, now you have it. Now with this ability, you can actually use Veil and then just go anywhere you want and retain the ability. Now I know this is probably going to affect a lot more than just Necron, but this is just like one quick example I can think of. So like, Necron player, rejoice. I mean, it's not like a huge deal, but you know, still better than nothing, right? So those are the new core rules implemented, and then there's like rulebook changes, all right? So let's talk about the rulebook changes. Alright, so let's now talk about the rule that actually matters, the one that's the as-if rule. Now this is probably the rule that is the most important, and you probably want to pay attention because this is going to affect greatly of how this game is going to be in the near future, alright? Here we got a question. The question says, when the rule allows a model or unit to take an action, move, shoot, charge, fight, or attempt to manifest a second power outside of the normal turn sequence, and that rule explicitly mentions to make the action as if it were a different phase of the turn structure to the current one. For example, that unit can shoot as if it were in the shooting phase. Do rules that are normally used during that phase, in this example, this will be the shooting phase, take effect? Is it the same of Overwatch attacks? So basically what this question is asking is like, in the Overwatch sequence where you're shooting against your opponent, does it treat as a shooting phase? Because if it treated as a shooting phase, obviously all the shooting rule apply, which, you know, includes like what we know is like you have to have the line of sight. So if your opponent is charging you outside line of sight, you can't shoot at them because, you know, all the shooting rule applies. You can't shoot at what you can't see unless you have the rule that says you can. And also, you have to be within range of your weapon in order to shoot at a target, so you can't shoot at your flamer if the unit is like 9 or 12 inches away because it's not close enough, so yada yada, we all know that. But what this guy is asking, what this question is asking is like, does that also applies to the other abilities, such as stratagems, warlord trait, heavily adaptation, unit ability, everything? Does it also apply? Because there's a lot of abilities and stratagem that says it will apply in a certain phase, right? As if you were in a certain phase, like it also applies there. So because since Overwatch is treated as a shooting phase, does that mean I can use all my shooting phase shenanigans in Overwatch? That's what the question was asking. And to my surprise, GW's answer says, with the exception of stratagems, all rules, for example, ability, warlord trait, second power, that would apply in the subsequent phase apply to actions that are taking place as if it were that phase. So let's just deconstruct the sentence a little bit. So basically what it says is everything except stratagems, right? So you cannot use stratagems for this. So for instance, if you're trying to Overwatch, right? People are trying to charge your hive guards, and you say, oh, let me just activate my single-minded annihilation because it's a stratagem. It says I can activate my shooting phase. No, you can't do that because it says everything except stratagem. So stratagem is completely out of the game. You can only use stratagem if it's actually that actual phase. So you cannot use stratagem in the as-if phase, right? However, it says abilities, warlord trait, second power, all rules except stratagems applies. Now this is quite crazy because this also means that heavily adaptation will work as well. So what does that mean? If you just turn your pages to like Tyranid Codex, Chronos Bio Barrage, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for unit with this adaptation in your shooting phase if they did not move in the preceding movement phase. Now, back before this rule is out, what this means is you only get to reroll hit rolls of a 1 in your shooting phase. So in your shooting phase, obviously when your opponent charge you, it is not your shooting phase whatsoever. It's their phase, right? It is not your shooting phase. However, what this answer implies, what Games Workshop's answer implies, it says it will all apply. It will all apply in the Overwatch attack because Overwatch is the as-if phase, and it says all rules except stratagem, which includes the heavily adaptation, obviously, all rules will apply. So from now on, if your opponents try to charge your Chronos unit and they did not move in the preceding movement phase, you actually get to reroll hit rolls of 1 in Overwatch. Now, this is just one small stuff. This is one small example, because there's going to be even crazier stuff I'm going to talk about, especially for Tau, right? But from now on, let's just continue to read the rest of the sentence. However, if a stratagem specified that it must be used in a specific phase, then it can only be used in that phase. For instance, you cannot use a stratagem that says use a stratagem in the shooting phase to affect a unit that is shooting as if were in the shooting phase. So basically, this is what we're talking about with the Hive Guard, and the single-minded annihilation example. You cannot use single-minded annihilation in the as-if shooting phase, which in this case is going to be Overwatch. Overwatch is the as-if shooting phase, so you cannot use the single-minded annihilation because it says right here you cannot use that. For the purpose of this FAQ, though, this is by far like the most important line. For the purpose of this FAQ, Overwatch attacks are also considered to be attacks made as if it were your shooting phase. This is huge. This is the biggest change ever. This is biggest change ever. Because like in the main rulebook, it does not imply anything whatsoever that the Overwatch is your shooting phase. Not at all. It just says it has to follow the normal rules of shooting. It does not say it's in your shooting phase. But like for the purpose of this FAQ, Overwatch attacks are considered to be the attacks made as if it were your shooting phase. Now, this last 3 words are huge because now it means like I said, like now you get to apply all sort of shenanigans that only happens in the shooting phase. For instance, let's talk about another example, right? Let's talk about Exocrine, right? Exocrine with Weapon Beast. If this model does not move in your movement phase, it can shoot all of its weapon twice in your shooting phase. Back in the day, when it's trying to Overwatch, it can only Overwatch with their Heavy 6 Bioplasmic Cannon, right? Because it's not their shooting phase in Overwatch, right? Obviously, because it's your opponent's turn. But with this FAQ, we can now Overwatch with full shot, because Overwatch is now considered as if it were your shooting phase, which Weapon Beast will now apply, alright? But however, this does not apply to everything. Like, don't get too excited, there's still stuff that does not apply, alright? For instance, let's take the exact same unit. Let's look at another rule this unit has. Symbiotic targeting. If a model does not move in this movement phase, you can add 1 to hit rolls in the following shooting phase. If you do so, it cannot charge in the same turn. Alright, so the key word here, alright, is in the following shooting phase. Alright, this is important. In the following shooting phase means it only applies to the shooting phase immediately after. So let's say in your movement phase you did not move and you trigger this rule, and it will only affect the shooting phase immediately after because it says the following shooting phase, not shooting phases. So it does not apply to the Overwatch phase that's considered as your shooting phase because it's not the one that's immediately after, obviously, right? So not only this, for Lehman Russ Battle Tank, for the grinding events, it's actually the same deal as well. So it says you get to shoot twice with your turret-mounted weapon if you did not move more than half of your maximum movement speed in your following shooting phase. So next time when you're trying to charge a Lehman Russ Battle Tank and your opponent's trying to Overwatch you with 2d6 shot, you need to correct him. You need to correct him and say, hey, it only happens in your following shooting phase, and this is not your following shooting phase. Your following shooting phase has already gone, right? So basically, all in all, Alright? What you need to do, whatever race you're playing, Tau, 80 Mech, Space Marine, Chaos, whatever race you're playing, you need to open your codex right now and then scheme through every single stuff that will affect your shooting phase. Because from now on, all those rules will apply during Overwatch. It will now apply in Overwatch. Except, obviously, the one that says in the following shooting phase that will still not apply because, you know, it's obviously not I just explained the whole thing, so you guys know the idea. So, this is quite big. This is really big. And also, not only in the shooting phase, this also applies in the assault phase and the movement phase. There's gotta be a lot more ability that's going on because it basically says every single ability that will work in a certain phase will now also work in the as-if phases. So for example, let's look at another tournament example. Let's look at Hive Guard. Well, not Hive Guard, I'm sorry. The Swarm Lord, right? The Swarm Lord. Let's see. In each of your shooting phases, you can pick one of a friendly Hive Fleet unit within 6 inches of the Swarm Lord. That unit can move and advance if you wish, as if it were your movement phase instead of shooting. As if you were in your movement phase. So what that means is that, well, obviously you cannot use stratagems like a metabolic overdrive because, you know, the rules right here stated that the stratagem is exempt from this. A stratagem does not work for this particular rule. But if you have any other rule that will somehow affect the movement phase, then you can use it during the Swarm Lord Hive Commander ability, right? That's just one example that you might want to start thinking about because now it will work. It will now work in the active phases. So what you need to do right now, if I were you, you know, I'll probably do this right after making this video, is that I need to scheme through all the freaking codex to see if there's any sort of, well, I don't want to sound like a win at all cost player, but it is really not, because now Games Workshop actually published like a whole FAQ to talk about this, that basically anything that's non-stratagem, alright, anything that's not a stratagem, anything that doesn't say in your following whatever phase, right? Because the following phase only applies to the following phase. It does not apply to all the phases that's upcoming. So all the phases, as if phases, will not apply to all the rules. So now for Tau, they can use their command drones, they can use their ethereal invoking the elements. It will now also apply in the Overwatch. It's just so many things going on. I think overall this is going to obviously bump the shooting army a little bit more because now they can use even more shenanigans in their Overwatch phases as if with their shooting phase, right? So this is pretty much it. This is pretty much what I want to talk about today. This is all the changes that I find important. Obviously there is a lot more. For example, like I'm not going through like every single small changes of every single codex because that, you know, you can just read, right? So that's pretty much it of this video today. I hope this video helps, and please discuss with me what you agree, what you don't agree, and then talk about all the important changes that matters to you the most in this FAQ. And if I miss anything important, please let me know. If I said anything wrong, please feel free to correct me because I don't want to, you know, spread the false information to the crowd. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. This is Simugi signing out. Goodbye.